I'm Duane Brumitt. He's Allie Alberigo, and this is the School Owner Talk podcast. Hello, and welcome again to the School Owner Talk podcast. Allie, great to be with you, sir, and you doing well?
Yeah, I am. I can't complain. I'm a little stressed out. We have our tournament this weekend. It's going to be a big event, so that kind of stuff is just always on your mind.
What day is your tournament? Sunday?
Sunday. Yeah,
Okay.
The 17th. So
Okay.
it's like Friday night I have to go to a wedding. Saturday I'm teaching a seminar at my friend's dojo, a really cool virtual seminar at my
That would
buddy's.
be me.
Yeah, that would be you, which is exciting. Like I told my students and they're like, wow, that's cool. I get to, that they're like, I'm going to try to set it up where I could have a big screen for them to watch as well as you guys, and I'll get you the link, by the way, later. I'll give you my link.
Okay.
But yeah, that's exciting. And then set up after your seminar that I teach, and I have to go and set the gym up. Then I'll relax a little. And then the next day I'm up at 6 a.m. and I go to like 7 p.m. So it's this week I just dread because it's a long, long week.
Yeah, but then what? You got a vacation coming up, right?
Yeah, then I'm home Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I go to Nashville for 4 days.
Yep, that'll be fun.
Yeah, I was there when I was a kid, so that was fun back in the day. I remember the Grand Ole Opry and things like that. But as an adult, I haven't been there. My wife just loves country music. I'm kind of, I enjoy it. I could tolerate it. I'm a much more of an 80s metal band guy, but we're excited. I heard there's some amazing restaurants and some fun places to go, and we're trying to get in the Grand Ole Opry and see a show, and it should be pretty cool.
Yeah, even if you do the Grand Ole Opry tour, is really good.
Yeah, that's what we're setting up to do that. Yeah,
Yep,
should be
yep.
fun. So today, you want to go over it? Go tell everybody.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about martial arts testings and graduations. This was prompted really because I had given Allie a call earlier in the week, and we were looking to maybe do some things that were different. I wanted to bounce some ideas off of him, but really we want to kind of talk about the significance of testing.
Right.
Obviously, the journey through color belts, the road to black belt, and then really, I think the transformational power of actually having testings as well, because I think that those really can be vitally important. So
Yeah.
anything else before we hop on?
Well, no, what I do want to make sure that we cover, which we will, I'm sure, is to really get the energy behind the concept of testing. And we could explain that more later on, but really understanding the value of what a test is and why and so on.
Yep. Well, I know, let's kind of dive into the first segment, if you will, with regards to the significance of the testing and, exploring maybe why martial arts testing is really a pivotal moment in a practitioner's journey. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And I'd like to point out that back when I was a martial art, student coming up the ranks, I was never allowed to ask about a test. If I was a belt and I asked, hey, when am I getting my next belt? My teacher would penalize me and say, now you're waiting 6 more months. Because his goal, and I like the mindset, was it's not about the belt, it's about the training. And I have a good friend that we've done some interviews with and stuff like that, Sensei Anthony Arango. He has from beginner to black belt. Once you become a black belt, there aren't any degrees. It's not first, second, third, fourth, fifth dan. It's just black belt. And everyone just continues to train. There's no real black belt levels, right? It's just being a training student and getting better at what you do. And I like that mindset a little too, because I do think people get caught up in the belt system. They get caught up in the ranking. Too much so, like a parent, well, my son is bored. He didn't get his yellow belt yet. Or he wants to quit because his friend got his belt before him. That kind of thing. But yeah, I think that's, the significance of testing is really the monitoring, right? Knowing where you're at and what you need and how to improve. It's like goal setting 101.
It is. It's goal setting. Like you said, it's measuring the progress. It's If done right, I think it's building the muscle of discipline that
Yeah.
you've got to do hard work. You got to put the work in to get the results, really.
And you know what, Duane, I like about your school, like you have this kind of, I don't want to call it old school, but you kind of do in a way where, you have like a 3-strike rule. And if people don't do what they're supposed to do, they get like an essay or they get, reprimanded and realigned as far as the track that they should be on.
Are
And
not allowed to test.
yeah, and they're not allowed to test. They can get, like I had a dad the other day, we started this, I think we talked about it last week. I started this unprepared letter. And if people come to class without their necessary gear, after I've done like jump through 70 hoops to remind them, and they still show up without their equipment, I hand them this letter. And the letters, in my opinion, is stern but nice, and asking them for their help to prepare their kids and get them ready so that we could teach them. And I already had one parent said he's not going to continue. He doesn't like the letter. He's mad at me because we want his kid to learn, and we want them to come to class prepared. He doesn't like that. So I'm like, kind of sometimes I'm like, wow, I just don't understand the world we live in right anymore. But you're right though, that discipline, setting goals, measuring, and by the way, we have to teach them to measure their progress, right? How they need to know what they need to know so that they could progress forward, not us. Right? It's too much babying.
Yeah, it's not our responsibility to make sure that you know the material.
Right.
You have to take ownership in it. And that's part of the testing process. And I don't know about you, but we used to do the testing. And again, we're talking about below black belt, but we would do below black belt testing. And the individual would come up to the test, and they really didn't measure up. But I didn't want to flunk them right on the test.
Right.
So I would tell them when I tie their belt, hey, look, there's these 2 things that you need to work on. We need to make lessons to do it, catch you up or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then I found that was really not being true to the testing process.
Right.
So hopefully to alleviate that, we instilled skill stripes that have to be earned in order to go to the test. So if you don't earn your skill stripes in class, then you can't even go to the test to flunk. Right. And most of the people that go to the test should actually pass the test then, because they've earned their skill stripes. And so we tried to, not have just the big goal of getting to the test, but the small little minor goals. So for instance, we've got a skill stripe for hand technique, foot technique, form, self-defense, yada, 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 just so that they could break that big goal down into small goals in order to, get to that test. Does that kind of make sense?
Totally makes sense. I think that, so when I was in Japan and we were going to, like our initial goal to go to Japan to train with the master and get rank recognition and promotions so that we could come back and teach our students. It was different over there because you would learn the material, you would study the material, you'd test, and they'd give you a percentage grade, like you would get 98%, 95%. Anything below 90% was a fail. And you'd have like 6 Shihans there judging you. Some were really hard-nosed and you'd get low scores. Others were not as bad, but it was up to you. Like if you didn't do well, you inevitably knew you were going to fail. And it was your responsibility to come back and do it again. If you didn't, they didn't care. You just stayed at the rank you were. It wasn't like they were as interested as you and I are to move our students and progress them through the ranks, because in our school, we know if they don't move forward, they're probably going to quit, right? So that's a little harder. We're like kind of doing this balancing of scales to try to make sure we don't ruin self-esteem. We keep them motivated. We keep them going. But at the same time, we don't just give rank away.
Yeah, well, you don't want to do that. And I had done that before because I wanted to keep the students.
Right.
And hopefully there's probably listeners that, are thinking bad of me because I did that. And hopefully they never did it.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't do that anymore, and we haven't done it in a long time, but, I can't give you a date. I mean, we've been open for almost 25 years now. So maybe it's been 20 years since we were like, no, this just isn't working, whatever it was. But I think the significance of, implementing a belt system as opposed to not having a belt system, because
Right.
before, I mean, it was correct me if I'm wrong, but there was no belt systems
Yeah.
until a certain period in time.
Well, the more modernization of the karate systems like Gichin Funagoshi and the judo systems, then they started to encourage colored belts so that people could be monitored at skill level through the belts for competition, for progression, and so on. So there's an old saying, there was a white belt and it just kept getting dirtier. Eventually it became black and then it wore away and it opened up from the inside out and became a white belt again, and all of that stuff. But look, rank is different in every style. Like you could get to a black belt in some schools in 2 years, and other schools could. I just saw our guy on the Facebook page for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The guy got his coral belt, they call it, and I'm like, I never heard of a coral belt, and the belt looked black to me, but they call it a coral belt, but it's like red and black, and I think it's like being a black belt for 15 or 20 years under that system. You get this specific belt, right? So every criteria is different in every school.
Yeah, yeah, and I just think the belts really are measuring tools. They're motivating factors, and I know for me, one thing that I really try to instill into our students is there are two ways to measure your progress, not one.
Right.
And the first way is the outward way. That is the belt, seeing that your belt has changed.
Right.
That's one way to measure your progress. But the other internal way, but not necessarily internal, it is external too.
External, yeah.
Is that have I and am I physically improving? So not only can I do the information at bare minimum,
right,
but wherever I was in last belt cycle with that information, now can I do that information even better, including my new information, even if the new information is at bottom level, like
right.
whatever's acceptable. I said, that's what I tell my students is there's two ways to measure yourself. And really, if you focus on the second one, measuring your abilities, each belt level, that your abilities on all of the information is getting better, you'll never have to measure yourself by the belt because the belt will actually just come.
I love what you said, and I'm thinking about that even with my school. So like there has to be a way for students to monitor their progress. And quite frankly, a lot of the students don't know what they're expected to look like, act like, be like, or perform like, right? And they don't have a standard because, of course, obviously, the martial arts is totally foreign to them. Like for one time, a perfect quick story. I had a mom and she had her daughter who was like a purple belt or a brown belt in my school. And she said, I'd like to talk to you about the testing process, right? So usually when people say that, I internally get pretty like threatened by it. And then I said, okay, let's have a meeting. So we set it up for like the next day at whatever time. And I went through everything she didn't know. And I pulled out all our Q level sheets, our ranking sheets, and I highlighted what she needed to work on. And I put it in a folder. Like I was prepared to come back at this lady and show her what real reality is about why her kid's not getting her belt. So then when she comes in, I said, I know you want to have a meeting. I was wondering what you want to go over. And then she goes on to tell me, she goes, look, I'm a school teacher. She goes, and I monitor my students based on a few criteria. One, they get homework and they get pre-tests and they get tests. Hopefully the homework and the pre-tests lead up to them taking a test and passing the test. And then they move on to the next topic. She says, so your school is totally different. It's very foreign to me. Obviously it's Japanese. It's a, different culture. She goes, and I have no clue how to monitor my daughter's progress. I think she's doing well, but I don't know the martial arts. So I assume time period, if she's there for X amount of time, she should be learning X amount of material, because in school we've moved through 3 or 4 cycles in the grading period to move her on to the to the next level. So she says, I'm clueless as to what we need to do as parents to help her, guide her, explain to her why she's not getting promoted or whatever. So at that moment, like I just literally took the folder and tapped it on the desk and slid it off to the side. Like my whole entire argument of defending my position was gone. And I started to think to myself, like, yeah, that's where we kind of fall short in my school, where, again, we're foreign. This is totally different. Like, if someone learned piano and they took their kids to a piano lesson and all they did was learn how to hit a few keys and they've been there for years, they're going to think that school teacher sucks, and rightfully so, or the student is terrible and doesn't care. But if the student starts to learn how to play songs and eventually gets better and better, now the parent goes, my money is being well spent. Right. I could see it. So I think as schools should put in place some monitoring systems to be able to check the students and have them perform so that we could show the parents the progression. And imagine if it's an escalating progression, it's going up. I think that they'll stay for a long time because they can see the benefits.
Well, that goes back to the statement that I've said before, is clear as kind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you actually have standards and you're able to articulate what those standards are in a real tangible way, not because I don't know about you. I mean, I've heard speakers that talk way over my head. And, I need the third grade teacher speaking,
Yeah.
Eighth grade, but you know what I'm saying? So being able to articulate the information or disseminate it in a way that people can actually understand it and catch on to it, I think makes a big difference. So clear as kind.
It's not necessarily that we teach in a foreign language, but it's a foreign language to people. Mm-hmm. It's like when my guitar teacher tells me to do, A minor pentatonics. When I first started with him, I learned to play by ear. So he's like, do you know A minor pentatonics? I'm like, no. And then he showed me, like, on the fretboard, there are 5 scales that you could do that all work within the key of A minor. And once I learned them, it literally opened my mind to a whole nother level of playing. Right. So I think that we sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot, not getting the student and the parents on the same page as far as what's required of them and how to monitor their progress. Because I think parents are, I keep saying I think, I hate when I say that because I don't think, I know. I'm confident in my statement that we need to teach the parents what's expected so that they could monitor the children, so they could be behind us. And they could say, well, Joey, you didn't do your movements. You don't know these techniques. So, and it's sad because we're in an industry where parents are paying us to do what we do. And they almost feel like writing the check every month and bringing them to the class, and they leave the responsibility on us. And then they feel confrontation, them against us. Why isn't my kid getting his belt? It must be that you're not teaching him. But we have to synergize. I think that that's what's missing in a lot of schools.
Well, it's not just martial arts schools. It's actually missing in educational schools as well. Yeah, because they're not on the same page, and it's always the teacher's fault, and it's the teacher's responsibility for that child to learn the material when the parent isn't even helping them or supporting them how to read at home or how to do the math at home or those type of things. You know what I mean?
My daughter was terrible at math, and I got her a private tutor, and we would take her to the tutoring class. I used to pay like $150 for an hour for her to do a class in private tutoring with math. And then I had a cousin who was a mathematician, and he would call her and talk her through. I'm not good at math, so I couldn't really help her with all the quadratic angles and algebra. But let me tell you, I had a choice. Blame the school and blame the teacher for my daughter being stupid or uneducated in the math, or I could find the solutions to get her up to par so that she was getting that level of education, even if she wasn't getting it through that specific teacher or that school. But I needed to make sure that she knew it. It was my responsibility as a parent. I don't know if parents do that anymore. I don't know. And by the way, I get it. I know why they don't. They're exhausted.
Yes.
They work all day. They're dealing with crap at work all day and clients and whoever. And now and that's why a parent got mad at me, wants to take his kid out because he was unprepared. Because the parent doesn't want someone else telling him what to do. He came home, like, he's not going to pay me $150 or $200 a month to kind of reprimand him and make him feel bad. But at the same time, we're just trying to help and do our job.
Yeah.
So I think, the belt system and the colors are just ways to monitor and give them exciting new levels to train in, and hopefully monitor their progress and so on each time it changes with each given belt.
Yeah, but I think the testings are important too, not just for the monitoring, but to actually put pressure
Yeah.
of them being in front of a group,
Yeah.
pressure of them having to perform
Yeah.
when they're required to perform, not just when
Right.
they want to or feel comfortable
Yeah.
doing so. So I think there's a lot of other aspects to having a test as opposed to not.
Do you pass and fail people like as everyone is like? Because for me in my school, we're pre-testing along the way. When they become and they know their material, we'll set up a ceremonial. I'm holding up my quote fingers for the listeners, not video people, and they then will go through the moves, and then we do a ceremonial awarding of the rank, and the whole thing, and so on. But I've never failed anyone in my school because they wouldn't be up for testing. Although I have to tell you, there are some times where I wish I would be able to fail people because they don't deserve it test day.
Yes, we fail people.
Wow.
Most of the time, they don't make it to the test.
Right.
So very seldom do we ever have to do it on a test.
Right.
And when I say very seldom, I mean, I'm talking color belt test right now. I'm not talking black belt, but color belt test. Yeah. I mean, it's probably 99.5% of everybody that goes to the color belt test passes.
Right.
But we talked about this, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago where I had a parent. They were maybe 3-4 weeks ago, but they contacted Mr. Bean, and then they contacted me because their child was not allowed to go to test just because they didn't turn in their, no, it was a month ago, excuse me, because they did not turn in their leadership packet. And so every 3 months, our leadership team has a leadership packet that they have to read. It's a leadership quality that they read and learn about, and then they have to actually do the questions and fill it all out. Right. And they didn't turn it in time. So we test every three months. The end of that particular quarter was July 31st. They did not turn it in, or not the end of that second month, because the end of that quarter was actually August 31st.
Right.
Right. But you have to have it done in the first 2 months. So July 31st came. The 1st of August comes. Now they're contacting us saying, oh my gosh, we didn't get it done. Can he turn it in late? Blah, 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 blah. Mr. Bean said no. And he's not testing.
Now, I love that. Like in my heart, I love consequences, and I love having to have responsibility. Like I give, and by the way, I applaud you on that, because like a lot of school owners would cave because we don't want to destroy the kid's self-esteem. And to be honest, we don't want to deal with the bull crap from the parents when they're upset and maybe quitting and going elsewhere. And, there's a whole litany of things that we will have to deal with when we stand our ground on a system that we say this is the way the rules are and tough luck. So we sometimes cave, or we bend and we work and we accommodate. But I love the fact that you don't. And that's how my teacher was. Sorry, you don't have your stuff, go home. I once had a student, one of my students that I brought to a tournament with my teacher, and he was a mess. The kid he's an adult now, but never was prepared, always forgot something. His uniform is supposed to be in my school with my teacher. We had to spray starch our uniforms. If we had a wrinkle in our uniform, he would send us home. So I would iron on the ironing board before my classes and spray starch so they were stiff, And he showed up to a tournament without the uniform, and it was wrinkled. It was not without the uniform, but it was wrinkled. My teacher said, okay, you sit on that bench and you iron it with your butt until you're done. And he sat there literally on it for like an hour, sliding back and forth until he got most of the wrinkles out. And then my teacher sent me in, check the uniform, and if it's okay, let him out. But he literally taught that lesson, which was an incredible lesson. I don't think it ever helped him because he was still a mess for the rest of his training. But that's how my teacher was. He didn't care. Like, if you don't like it, don't come. I don't care. Quit. That kind of stuff. So I think that it's important having those belt levels, making sure that people are progressing through the colors, making sure they're hitting all their stripes if they have intermediate stripes between the belts and so on, and making sure that they're able to monitor their own progress and so on with that.
Yeah. And I would say most belt levels, they go from a lighter color to a darker shade just because it's getting closer and closer to,
Right.
Black belt. Now, I know that some arts and some styles, each belt has a representation of something different, and that's quite fine. If that's the case, then I think that should also be taught, because then it just really makes it that much more of a deep-rooted buy-in to the system or the systems, in your program. So, the colors may or may not matter. But if they do matter in your system, I think that they should be talked about, and people should know about them, or maybe even they need to actually be mandated that why this color is this color.
Yeah, at the end, and here's a big thing. I have all this curriculum written out on paper. We have a Little Warrior curriculum, 1 page, because it's 1 year long, and then we have Mighty Warrior, white, yellow, green, blue, purple, brown, black, and youth and adults separate. But they're buildable. Like, they're all similar, but we just basically go backwards from adults to the youth and the kids, and we thin it out a little. But it also at the bottom says you need X amount of classes, X amount of time, and know your rank and your techniques in order to be promoted. Promotion is a gift. It's not a right. You don't just get it because you put in the time. You have to be able to perform. However, I say all those things, and sometimes I look at my people, and I look at my black belt, Ryan, who helps me run the dojo, or runs the dojo for me when I'm not there too. He will sometimes promote, and I'll look at them and say, I don't think they should have been promoted. But do we want them not to continue and get demotivated, or do we give them a gift, a promotion, and do like you said before, tell them they need to catch up and keep working on them and making sure they're doing well? Like, it's almost like a catch-22. I stand by in my heart the hard school, old school way of, you don't get it if you don't deserve it, and tough luck. But then again, I'm always, as a school owner, I'm always trying to balance the scales of keeping people happy and keeping retention and monitoring progress and so on.
Yeah, I understand that, and I used to do that. Like I said, I mean, I did, but I don't do that anymore. And mainly, honestly, because Mr. Bean handles all of those things, and he has no problem. It's okay. So I had a program director one time. Here's the easiest way to explain it. I had a program director one time. She was also our youngest at the time, like, years and years and years ago, his daycare provider. So our youngest would go to him 3 days a week, just Monday through Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I drop him off at 8 a.m., pick him up at noon, that type of thing, just so I could get work done. Well, her name's Dawn, and I eventually put Dawn in the position of collecting the late tuition.
Right.
I was always trying to do it, but then I'd get a sob story, and I'm like, okay, I'll help you, blah, 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 blah.
I know.
And I had a discussion with Dawn, and Dawn's like, Duane, here's what we'll do. I will take care of it, because I have no problem, because I can't waive anything.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, because, like, Dawn, if you asked me to be your bill collector for your daycare, I would have no problem saying, no, you owe, Dawn, and how are we going to settle this today?
Yeah.
Or your child can't come back. Like, I would have no problem saying that.
Yeah.
And so Mr. Bean has no problem saying that. I took myself out of those situations on purpose, because I was actually the problem in those situations.
Right.
But then I set up the structure so that my team follows it, and they can't make a decision, because the structure already made the decision.
Yeah, I get it. And in other customer service areas, like my cable company, they raise my cable tuition every year, payments. And every year I call up and negotiate. And the first level is the first person. I'm sorry, sir, this is the cost. I can't do anything about it. Okay, then I'm going to cancel my service. Okay, let me give you to escalate this to, the retention division. And then you get someone who says, I can't help you. I'm like, okay, well then how do I go about canceling? Well, let me put you on with our manager. Inevitably, they're like, sure, we'll drop it down. We're ready to go. We'll go even less than what you're paying now and get rid of the increase. Like, and that you know they're different blockades. But you and you're right. Like I've had many people make me feel bad that I was asking them for the tuition that they owed me.
Yeah.
And I had one mom who's not renewing. Her daughter was so talented. She's not renewing because she would every single month from the minute she joined was bouncing her tuition payments. And she got mad at me. She goes, "Oh, you know, you're all about the money. I didn't realize that that's what you were all about." I'm like, "How could you say that? All I'm asking you for is what you owe for the month. I'm not asking for anything else, right?" But she ended up switching it because that's how people are. But anyway, so let's kind of move on to our next thoughts. And we had talked about that road to black belt, right? Like where, you know, that's the ultimate goal, achieving that black belt, and you know the emotional, the physical demands, and so on. Like what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think one is we need to make sure that we create a culture that the ultimate goal isn't first degree black belt.
Right.
Just because and that used to be my culture where, you know, black belt, black belt, black belt. And that's still a cultural thing anyways.
Right.
So in your school, I believe that you should really demolish that culture and, you know, really say something like, you know, black belt is really just white belt.
Right. Right.
Because all I found for black belt is that they've mastered the basics.
Yeah.
They haven't even learned their black belt material. So yeah, we give them the rank of first degree black belt, but are you really a black belt?
Right.
And so that's one thing that we really talk about. And then the second part to that, and we can get into the black belt testing, you know, road to black belt type thing. But one of the things at the end with regards to that is we have a 6-month probationary period.
Right. Yes.
So, you know, once you do your black belt test, you still have 6 months that you're in the black belt class, and you got to pass those 2 quarters in that black belt class in order to even then go to the graduation and actually get your black belt, because you have a probationary black belt that you get.
Yeah.
And so, you know, however many belts you have in your system, 10, 12, 15, whatever, all the way up to black belt, doesn't matter. We do have one for every single 3 months. We don't make them wait 6 months in between, you know, on some, because I know some schools, the closer you get, the longer you wait before you know, you test, which is fine. And I used to do that, but I don't do it anymore. But so we have those small steps, but then once they reach that last belt before black belt, we personally have a 3-step process prior to actually going to the black belt test. So in essence, the whole black belt testing process is a 6-month process. So 3 months before the actual test, there are 3 pre-tests they have to pass. The first pre-test for us is on hand techniques, foot techniques, and their forms. If they pass that, a month later, they go through self-defense, rolls, and falls. And then the 3rd month is a physical fitness test, and then also the written test that they have to pass. Before then, on the 4th month, then they can go into, you know, the actual test. And then on that 4th month starts their 6-month, I'm sorry, it's a 9-month process. So that starts their 6-month process of, you know, going into the black belt class, passing those other 2 quarters, because in our black belt class, we test every single quarter on the information that we worked on in that quarter. So there's an actual test for that information inside of there. So our black belt testing process is a 9-month process. And that's evolved because when we first had it set up, there were no pre-tests. You would go to your black belt test and, you know, you would pass or fail. And we would actually promote you right there, you know, after the test, which was quite embarrassing for people that did not pass. Right. And because of that, very few people actually, we flunked very few people when we probably should have flunked more. Right. Because I had the peer pressure of not wanting to do that to them in front of everybody else.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does.
So I removed those fears, because if somebody doesn't pass the black belt test, all we do is we just have a meeting with them and let them know that, you know, look, you're going to have to start this whole testing process all over again. And 3 more months is going to be the pre-tests again. And you can start it back in those 3 months.
Yeah.
And so it's a private reprimand is what it is. And do we, so I would say almost 100% of the people that, make it to the black belt test. So maybe not even, maybe like 95% of the people that make it to the actual black belt test are ready and they pass because they actually pass the other 3 pre-tests. But
Okay.
I've had people that have passed the pre-test and go to their black belt test and then not pass.
Right.
They just totally froze. It was like almost like a deer in a headlight type thing. And I knew that they knew the material, but it's your test. You got to be able to perform when you're asked to perform.
Some people, though, and I do know this because look, I've been doing martial arts my whole life, and I remember when I would test in front of the Grand Master, it was very anxiety filled and stressful. And, the only thing I could do is prepare to my very best of my ability. And then, even if I performed at 80%, hopefully my 80% was going to be way higher than most others. Right. So, but I agree with you though, dude, that's part of the process is to perform in the test and do your best. Right. That's the key.
I can't tell you how many times I've thought about doing this that, it becomes a cultural thing that everybody flunks their first degree black belt test and has to wait and do it again.
Well, with Steven Seagal, I never acquired any rank with him. I've just done like a bunch of seminars training with him in the past, a long time ago. It was known that you would always fail your black belt test twice before you would get your black belt and be able to pass. Like it just didn't matter. You'd go into the test knowing you're failing. Like you're going to fail you. That was the actual part of the test was taking the test and failing once or twice or 3 times. And it was a way of him to see like who was coming back, who was going to get discouraged, who was going to quit. Those are the old school ways. Like my teacher, Shion Vasquez, Sensei Vasquez would do that too. He would put you through these just for no reason whatsoever, trials and tribulations, just to see how you reacted to it. Like one day I went to the dojo and he acted really mad at me. I thought I did something and he's like, leave your belt on my desk and don't come back. And for like a week, every day I'd drive all the way to Ridgewood, Queens and go to the dojo, an hour there, an hour back. And they had like this little speakeasy door and they'd open and then I'd hear him go, Allie's here again, send him home, lock the little window. And I'd go home and come back until after like the 7th day, he said, okay, come in. And he handed me the belt. And I said, what did I do? Can I ask? He's like, you didn't do nothing. I just wanted to see if you were going to keep coming back. And, I eventually ended up being one of his top guys, in the school. But it was a test that most people in my school would fail. They'd already be at another dojo signing an agreement to start training because I'm a jerk. I'm an idiot. How dare I do that? Yada, yada, yada. And they'd move on. So I love the journey. In my school, I have a journey to black belt, which is like yours, but I just call it the 6-month success cycle. And once they become eligible, they've got all their stripes on their brown belt and they're up to par. Then we put them in the 6-month cycle and we track their diet. We track their exercise. They have to meditate. They have to read my book. They have to train on a regular basis in special classes. They have to start learning the physical aspects, which is running. They have to be prepared to do a 4-mile run, and they have to, do physical and fitness. And I had a scale at my dojo for the longest time that one of the parents gave to me as a gift because preparing for his son's black belt test, he would run with his son, walk with his son, exercise with his son, and he lost 70 pounds, the father. So as a gift, he bought me a scale, like, the doctor scale with the little sliding thing. He bought that as a gift for the school because he actually had a transformation in his life just prepping the physical side. Pretty cool.
Yeah, wow. Everybody has to do 4 miles for first degree?
We're brutal. Like, I can almost tell you that probably my tests are, and by the way, let me also preference this by saying, like, every test I gave got more and more difficult. And at one point, one of my friends said to me, you got to stop, like he goes, because in another 2 years, your guys are going to have to be superhuman. You're going to ask them to fly, hold their breath underwater for 5 minutes. Like unrealistically, I just kept making it more difficult because people would step up. So then I finally got to a point where I'm like, I'm going to keep it here. So yes, the answer is yeah. In order to test, they have to do a 4-mile run. Normally 3 is required, but I always push them to 4. They have to do 1,000 jumping jacks, sit-ups, push-ups. We usually army crawl across the football field and do all these things. And then, prepare physically, go through it. It's an arduous test. Like people will come back with bloody blisters, and it's brutal, the physical side. But they are in the best shape of their lives. And then they get a day off and we do a walkthrough, like a test rehearsal, like a day before the recital, we do a dress rehearsal. And then the following day is their actual test.
Okay.
So, but I started off with 4 weeks. Oh, no, actually, I started off with, I would call you up. I go, Duane, you're testing for black belt in 3 weeks. And I'd hang up. And people would be like, scared to death. It was brutal because I was intimidated, getting them mentally ready. That was fun, but at the same time, it scared the hell out of people. So then I went to like a 3-week cycle where they would train. But then when they tested, I had people that I literally was afraid that they were going to have a heart attack during the test, like older people. I had a girl who was young, with sure will, she passed all the physical, like just the will alone. But when she was done, she literally fell down to the ground and peed herself because she was physically exhausted, right? So I started thinking to myself, what happens if someone gets hurt? Like if someone has a heart attack, what am I doing? So I said, I can't prepare people and get them in shape in 3 weeks. So we made it into a 2-month cycle, eventually becoming a 6-month cycle, because 6 months of continual habits and practice changes a person's life, right? So now that's what we have. So it's an ongoing process for an entire 6 months, getting in the mindset. So normally when it comes time for testing, they're so physically fit that the test goes quicker. They're so much more, ready to learn, and they know their material so well. It's like a piece of cake for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We have a whole litany of things they have to do.
Yeah, because we only have first degree, you got to run a mile. Second is 2 miles, and third degree is 3 miles.
Wow. Yeah. I've had people that walk. One woman dislocated her knee and she couldn't run. She speed walked as fast almost as the runners. I had a guy, like back in the day, like what is a good, like a 6-minute mile is like insanely good, right? Like you could run a mile in 6 minutes. It used to be like people were breaking records of the 8-minute mile. And they're like, wow, he ran it. It's unheard of, an 8-minute mile. Now people are doing it in 6, 5.5. That their pace.
Oh, no, under 4 now.
Yeah. So now it's like, because of course athletics has improved and the training. So like now I've had my average guys are running like 6-minute miles.
Well, once Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, then immediately people were breaking it right after him. It was just a mindset thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So so our black belt test is literally transforming their lives. And unfortunately, though, I have to say, it's like they get their black belt and they're high. It's like a runner who runs a marathon. Now they're done. So like we used to have a saying, what's the quest? To be the best. What's our goal? Black belt. Now we say, what's the quest? To be the best. What's our goal? Black belt and beyond, sir. Right? Like, it's got to be like they need to know that it's not just black belt, because then people say, oh, I won't let my kid quit until they get their black belt.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want them to stay longer. I want them to train more.
So let me ask you this. I know that Grandmaster Hafner, he told me that I should have a test every month.
Right.
So, no matter when somebody comes in, every 3 months, they're testing. So every month there's a test in your school.
Yeah.
I did not adopt that. Just logistics wise, I didn't want to every Saturday, once a month, every Saturday, or one Saturday every single month to do a test.
Mm-hmm.
And then I used to do, big tests where I'd rent out a hall and or even a gymnasium and do everybody that day. Those were awesome because the whole studio would come. We'd have it all segmented out where this time is your starting time, that type of thing, and then the graduation would be at a different time, so everybody would end up doing all of the testings in different rings, and then by, let's say, noon we would do the graduation, and then those that were in leadership then stayed for a leadership seminar, either taught by me or a guest instructor, so that was every 3 months.
Yeah.
And now I've pared that down where I have testings in the individual classes,
Right.
whatever class you're in. You already know, because we book out our whole year,
Right.
so they know when their test is going to be. So that's how we run our color belt tests and even our quarterly black belt, progress checks. And then I was just going to say that we only do 2 black belt tests a year. So I'm curious with my color belt testings and then the way my black belt testings are scheduled. What is your schedule?
We don't have one, and what we've done all the things that you do, right? So we've done like those big huge group tests on a Saturday where everyone from all the schools came, and it was a big to do. Then we did that, then we'd have to have a makeup for the people who couldn't make it on that day, that kind of thing, right? And then we went to individual tests in pockets of people that were ready to test, and we'd set a date. So that's basically what we do now. And we do it during the class. So let's just say a Saturday morning at 9:15, all of our kids from 5 to 12 years old go to that class. If they're testing, we might do it on that Saturday with just those kids. And when they become eligible and ready, we then, of course, check them, make sure they have their classes, their time period, and their ability. Then we'll reach out to the parents, say, we're looking to do a test on Saturday. And can you make it? And then sometimes people say yes, some people say no. Back in the day, my teacher, you never knew, so you would test when you walked in. But if you ever said no, you would never test, or you'd wait another year or so, right? So I never, in my rank with my teacher, Sensei Vasquez, did I ever test on a specific day. It usually was in class. At the end of the class, the last 15 minutes, everybody surround Allie and attack him. And then I'd fight my way out of it. And then at the end, I'd be bloody. And even on my first day grand opening of my school, my teacher did that to me and promoted me. And in front of all the audience, they're beating the crap out of me. And I'm all done. I have a video that I had a long ponytail, my hair's out, my nose is bleeding, my lips bleeding. And I'm like, oh, it was such a great day. And I literally got 4 people join that day. They were students for years, but everyone else walked out like, what are these people, insane? And, that's how our tests were. And then he just gave me the belt. Right. So, but for us, we do it on a specific day with a specific group, and we promote as they come due. So it's not like every 3 months, every 2 months. It's just when they reach that level of requirement, and a group of them are in white belt and they've come for 2 months and they've learned their material, that group will then be put on a test list.
Okay. But so then how do you monitor that?
Well, we monitor it all individually in class. Okay. Like we're watching them and we have the parameters in Spark, by the way. And it'll tell us, we could say this belt level from white belt to white yellow stripe lasts this amount of time. So the minute they get tagged and they're in that thing, it'll tell us when they meet their criteria of classes and time period and so on. Rick Kellerman was there when that. So Sifu Kellerman wrote, they did that to you at the Empire State Karate Tournament. That is the truth. But that was from my black belt. And he whipped me with my belt and beat me and then right as he tied the belt on me and I got it, they called my division and said, self-defense division, black belt adults, ring, whatever. And he goes, go ahead. And I ran to the ring and I'm standing there like welts on my face, but I got my brand new belt. I'm smiling from ear to ear. And one guy elbows me and he goes, would you sleep with that guy's wife or something? And I'm like, he goes, he hates you. I go, no, he promoted me to black belt. And he goes, I would never do that. So that was pretty funny. But so Rick was there. He got to witness that. I didn't know that. That's great. I have a witness. So when I tell that story, I could say, look, there were witnesses.
Yeah, I think, really the other thing too that's important to share, and we do this in the belt or black belt testing process, is that, we share different experiences like what you talked about, different experiences that we or another black belt member had and what they learned and gained during that black belt process. Mm-hmm. Most of those individuals that we do that with really, didn't just stop at black belt, though. They went to second or third degree, or even, master belt. And I think that that's also important to help create that longevity, or, that future casting for that member, for themselves, to understand the impact. The other thing too is we make sure that we share that also with the parents that are listening, as well. And mainly those are usually done on the actual days of the actual test.
Right.
Because that's when the parents are there. And I do set up the test where I just tell all the parents now, hey, look, if you have a child out here, they're probably going to break down. They're probably going to cry. You're going to want to pick them up and hug them and squeeze them and tell them it's okay. But, if you can't take it, then just walk out for a little bit and then walk back in, because it's not going to be easy. We are going to put them under pressure. But what better place to do it with people that you trust, that want to see the best for your child.
Right.
And so just know that in advance. And they're not the only ones that have ever gone through this. And then I'll give a story about somebody that broke down and what happened to them. And if it's relevant, and it's even one of the instructors that are sitting at the table, at the testing table, I'd let hey, you tell them,
Yeah. I often talk about that. Like when I was a kid, I grew up on the TV show I Dream a Genie. Loved Barbara Eden. She was beautiful. And, as a little kid growing up, she's in a half shirt and just, I'm falling in love. But I remember on the show, they had this thing with like a movie projector, and you put these rubles in. That was their money from Genie Land. And if you rolled it forward, you could see the future. If you rolled it backwards, you could see where you started. And if you keep rolling backwards, you could go into the past. And then you could start what your future looks like from that point in time to see what it could have been, right? If we could only explain to people like what they're walking away from, like giving up because they're just like, yeah, my kid doesn't want to do it anymore. But listen to me. If you stayed with it, it would literally change and shape your life, your child's life, in a way that you could never imagine. But unfortunately, most people think of that as just selling snake oil. It's our business, so we're going to talk about it. It's so good. It's the best. Like I often say to people, listen, I know I'm telling you that this is life-changing, but ask some of the people who've been with me in the dojo that stuck with me for 15 years, 10 years, Sensei Dylan, Renshi Ryan, ask them their opinion and so you have understanding of what you have at your fingertips right now.
Yes.
You just got to follow through with it and stick with it and not give up and not let your kid quit and so on. So.
Yeah, no, I just want to remind everybody that, with regards to, I feel anyways, with regards to your testing processes, clear is kind. So if you can, make sure that you're, being really clear on what you're expecting. And then I as much as it isn't always good for business, I'm using the quote fingers,
right.
Following through with whatever the standards are that you've created are going to be to your benefit. And whether or not the person quits, so be it. I know that might be a reason why you don't pay your cable bill that month or whatever. I understand that. So you have to weigh that. But I think in the end, you'll be much happier that you created those standards, and your students will be happier because once they earned what they have achieved, they actually earned it.
Yeah, that's leaving off with, we could go over a few other things, but leaving off with what you just said, that is so powerful, that statement that like, if you're at a job that conflicts with your moral standards, like let's say, I don't know, I'm trying to think, I'm a vegan. I couldn't work in a chicken restaurant, right? Like I just couldn't do it, right? So like if it
or a slaughterhouse,
or a slaughterhouse, like I just couldn't do it, right? So I have a hard time going out with friends and family that are not vegan, and I have one relative that always he doesn't do it intentionally to make me upset, but like, what's the worst thing you could order at a dinner table and have a vegan sitting with you? Do you know?
I don't know. Steak?
I think veal.
Veal, okay.
Veal is one of the most torturous foods that you could ever make. That animal goes through the worst pain and lifestyle, right? So, but my relative always orders veal, and I'm like, I hit my wife, I'm like, there it friggin' goes again. I'm tolerating it, but for some vegans, they would leave the table and not deal with it, right? But if you can't live your truth, you're going to be miserable. So you had said you have to live according to your standards, right? So if your standards are not to let people pass their tests because you want your black belts or brown or purple to look a certain way, then don't sacrifice. And you know what? If you have 20 people, maybe 10 of them won't like it and 10 will quit. But the 10 that you keep are in line with your values. Like, you're not going to go to a satanic temple when you're a Christian. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just go, it's okay, they're still nice people.
You might go to witness, but other than that.
You know what I mean? Like, you got to really be true to what you believe in. And I think that that's a big lesson. What you had just said is a big lesson for business owners and school owners to not sacrifice your integrity.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not convenience morality. You just do it and be moral and ethical when you want. You have to live that truth every day, or else you end up dying and being, unhappy that with your whole entire life that had passed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Great topic today, Allie.
Yeah, I loved it. It was awesome. I love these things. And let's continue on. If anyone is listening at a later date, I just want you to know I still go back and read the comments. And if someone, even though it's not live, I'll go back. If I see that you commented, I will comment back. And if you have any questions or ideas and so on. So I had someone wrote, I think it's Rick Kellerman. He wrote, I had to quit a certain franchise martial arts school because it conflicted with his integrity. Yeah, agreed. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Duane, you're awesome. I appreciate you very much. And I'll see you next week.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk podcast. This would not be possible if it weren't for the support of our amazing sponsors. Please check out Elite Insights for all your website needs. They can be reached at eliteinsights.com. Add Health Coaching, helping school owners create a new and easy to implement revenue stream for your school. Visit addhealthcoaching.com. Lead Hunter Media, your online digital marketer and content provider. Visit leadhuntermedia.com. Academy Kings Growth Consulting and Management Group. They can be reached at academykings.com. And Spark Membership, hands down the best martial arts software for school owner management on the planet. They can be reached at sparkmembership.com. We will see you next time.